thousands of well wishes and I don't know if that's the right word, condolences, and lots and lots and lots of beautiful things were said by people that have been helped by my dad. But the one thing, and I did a little bit of a Sunday talk yesterday, it's called His Spirit Remains. Because what I realize is that, the whole thing that we've been talking about for the biggest part of our lives together, under my dad, is really, it's all about the Spirit anyway. And too many people used to get caught up in my dad, the man, and that really bothered him. That always really made him uncomfortable because it's not about, he would say, it's not about me. It's, and that's why he even said, go to your churches here in town and, go do what you do. If you agree with what I say, then follow my teachings, which are pretty basic Christianity. And I've been watching this TV series lately called The Chosen. Has anybody heard of this Chosen TV show? It's on YouTube. It's on all these different
It's on
Prime. It's on all these different platforms, and it's about Jesus, and it's about his life, and it's very interesting because this TV show is about Jesus, the man. And even though he knew that he was the chosen, he had to wait. He had to continue to wait until the timing was right to be able to, let his teachings out, you might say. And they did such a good job of it because he was just a man that knew that his Father in heaven had anointed him to do this job. And in watching him talk to the people, obviously it's just a TV show, but boy, I really think they did a good job. He was just a man. He was just a human being, just like all of us. And the thing that struck me, that continues to strike me, I'm watching this series go along, is what a kind man Jesus was as they portrayed him in this. And I do believe that he would have been an incredibly kind man, loving man. And so when I think of my father, I think he was always such a kind and loving man. He did not judge people. He saw their ailments and their psychological issues. He saw them clearly. But he didn't judge them for it. He would offer them just sweet advice. And his sweet advice was typically such simple advice, learn how to meditate. In other words, get out of your head. Stop watching all of these thoughts and things and whirlwind of emotional mumbo jumbo, that pulls you away from yourself, your truest nature, your true self. And learn how to meditate and be still and know that your Father in heaven is there with you. And it was always really simple. I don't think I've ever really seen much deviation from that for all of us. It was always just a simple thing. And I think most of us thought, well, that's just too simple. It's got to be more complicated than that. He doesn't know the whole story. Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know what I've been through. He doesn't know what my father did to me.
They always wanted to tell their story.
Because they always wanted to tell their story. Because their story, and it's funny because even in this TV series, Jesus would say, tell me your story. And he would listen to their story, and people, when they were honest enough to tell their story of, the story of the Good Samaritan where the one guy, he beat up the Jew and stole his horse. And in this TV series, it's interesting because they give you enough to know so that you know what story they're talking about. But what happened is the guy that stole the horse from the Jew and his money and his clothes, he felt so guilty, and Jesus decides to take he decides to take a different route, and he ends up going to this man's house that was the thief. And the man comes out of the house, and he's on crutches, and he says, what can I offer you? He says, I have nothing. I have no food. I have no money. And Jesus says, we have food. We'll feed you. He says, I've come to see you. So Jesus, and it's, well, I guess what I'm saying is, in Jesus' life, he followed his Father's guidance mechanism. He didn't know why he was going here and why he was going there. There was always one person with a map saying, no, Jesus, we need to go this way. And he says, we're going to go this way. Because he had a purpose. See, we all have a purpose in our lives. You go for a walk, you don't know who you're going to run into. You don't know who you're going to have a conversation with. But if you don't have that conversation, opportunity lost. So Jesus goes there, and they had all brought food because they were going to go on this journey. So Jesus says, I'm going to go ahead, we're going to feed you. And so they're sitting around, and they're make a fire, and they're eating, and Jesus says, tell me your story. And the man says, you have no idea. He says, if you knew me, he says, you wouldn't have anything to do with me. He says, tell me your story. And he tells him the story how he saw the Jew, and he was somebody who didn't like Jews. So he tells the story how he stole the man's horse, and he left the man naked and basically there to die. And so he starts crying, and Jesus says, the man did not die. He says, how do you know? He says, I tell you, the man did not die. Because that's the story of the Good Samaritan. Somebody came along and helped him. The man did not die. And so the man that had stolen the horse was so beside himself, he started crying, and he was so happy that this evil thing that he had done did not cause the death of this man. But he had a crutch, and he says, what happened to your leg? He says, well, he says, when I got close to my town, he says, the horse got spooked and threw me back and broke my leg. And he says, I had to crawl on my arms and knees and my arms and elbows, and I had to be helped. He goes, I was worse off after trying to steal the horse and stealing the horse. You see what I mean? So in other words, you think that you're going to get away with something, and then you end up being worse off. And so basically Jesus said to him, he says, you're forgiven. And the man says, how can you forgive me? And basically this story keeps showing us that Jesus keeps forgiving. Even though he knows our sins, we tell our stories. We all have stories, every one of us. I remember Brian a few weeks ago sat there and talked about his stories of when he was a young man, and how you're still judging yourself for your shenanigans when you were a young man. And it doesn't do any good. That's part of your life. Jesus does not judge you. Your Father in heaven does not judge you. You are the only one judging you. Your wife doesn't even judge you. She let go of it and forgave a long time ago. But you carry with you, we carry with us, judgments for stupid things we've done in our lives. Stupid, useless, dumb things. But even though we know that Jesus came to forgive us. And
isn't that our burden?
Well,
because he said, bring me your burden.
Well, there you go. She says, isn't that our burden? That is correct, right?
So you carry this burden until you're ready to give it up to him and say,
That's right.
All he wants you to do is admit that you were wrong.
That's right.
That's all he wants.
That's it.
And we think something, I don't know, we're just stuck wherever we're stuck, but all it is just saying, I'm guilty, I'm sorry. And that's
It's Brian, it's just like the man who said to Jesus, if you knew what kind of a rotten person I was, you wouldn't help me. And that in itself is a judgment. That in itself, right? Yeah. And it's funny because I have realized how incredibly simple it is, this forgiveness thing. But because we are lied to by the deceiver, by the liar, by the trickster, we keep on believing him. Oh, Jesus would never, never, never forgive me if he knew. He does know. He knows everything. There was a part where he goes to this well, and this woman who has been married a number of times, she was there and she was getting water in the middle of the hot part of the day, and he sits down and he hasn't told anybody what his mission is in life yet. I mean, other than his little collective. And he says to the woman, she says, you men and all of your judgments and men like you, and she was trying to tell off Jesus. And it's so cute. He says, no, he says, I am the first man. I am the chosen, basically. He says, I've been chosen to come and change the world. And she says, oh, yeah, sure. It's all men like you, that all your judgments, this, that, and the other. He says, let me tell you about you. And how many seen my dad do this to people? He says, your first husband was a bad man, and you left him behind. Your second husband was a good man. He was a holy man, and he smelled like oranges. This is so interesting. And he says, and every time you go through the marketplace and you smell oranges, you regret what you've done with that husband. And your third husband, he was a wicked man. And he tells her whole life, and she's just like, how do you know this? He says, because I told you. I have come to change the world. And she's so completely blown away. He says, you're the first person. He says, I came here to tell you, you're the first person that I'm telling what my job is. And it's so interesting to me because what I see through watching this series of television shows, interesting timing in my life, is that Jesus always came for the sinners. He always came for those that needed the doctor, not those that didn't need the doctor. He came for those that were in the worst condition, the sinners, the tax collectors, the adulterers, the ones that had done stupid things when they were young kids and couldn't let go of it. He came for us. He came to forgive us because we didn't know how to forgive ourselves. We didn't know that we actually could recognize that I made a mistake. I'm not being judged by God. I guess that's not forgiving myself. It's letting go and admitting that I've done something wrong. And being able to actually believe that Jesus does know everything that we've done in our lives. Everything. We can't hide it from him. We can't deceive him. We can't twist the story just right to make it seem better. We have to open up our hearts, surrender to the fact that we've made mistakes. We're not going to hell. We're not going to hell, especially if we stand in the face of Christ, because he is there to forgive us and to lift us up and take us to that house that he prepares for us.
Even the mistake is made for for a purpose. You just said the story of the man stealing the horse. It was all for a purpose. And we don't know how far reaching those things go. How I say these things are spiderwebbed in our life and connected to other people and the other things that we do. And when we are still, we begin to see how marvelous that really is.
Yeah. You know, the man that stole the horse, the next morning, Jesus and his disciples left and they went to the woman who had been married 5 times. They went to her house and she was there with her husband, her current husband, and they said, come in. We have 5 bedrooms, and he says there's one bedroom that's haunted of the spirit of my mother, and Jesus says, "Oh, good, I'll take that one." This movie it's such a cute show. It's incredible. And Jesus just feared nothing. He didn't fear the anger and the hate of those who would offer him anger and hate and spit at him. He just didn't react. He just didn't react. And then he woke up in the morning, and the scene was that the horse thief had his broken leg, and he was so completely helpless, with his crutch. And he woke up, and he got up, and he went, "Oh, my leg! My leg! It's healed! It's miraculous!" And he starts jumping around with his wife and his little daughter. And they showed Jesus' face, and he smiled. He says, and his 2 guys that were with him said, "Why are you smiling?" He says, "Because I know a man who's having a happy morning." And he says, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Our friend with the broken leg. It's broken no more." And he says, "How do you do it? You're not even there and you perform miracles." Right? Because we're so flesh oriented, we're so visually oriented that if we don't see it, that maybe we don't believe it. But the beauty of Jesus and the beauty of our Father in heaven is that miracles happen when you don't see them. Matter of fact, miracles happen mostly when you don't see them. If you saw them all the time, like in the time of Jesus, one person said, people, they believe in Jesus because they can see the miracles that he's doing. But what if they couldn't see the miracles he was doing? What if we couldn't see the miracles that Jesus was doing? Would we believe what he did? And then I look at my dad. I see my dad, the miracles that he did for all of you and for me. The amazing miracles in our lives that have not only changed our lives, have changed our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives. Miracles. And all it was his faith and his trust in his Father inside his heart, and his ability to continue moving ahead without reacting to what people say. It's like I looked at the newspaper and this stupid thing that they wrote in the newspaper, which something said to me, that stupid newspaper, they could never say anything nice about my father. Not even in his death. Not anything nice. Not thousands of people have been helped by his teachings, and he was a good father. At the very end, it said, he had so many kids and grandkids, so on and so forth. There was nothing that newspaper could say that really would mean a hill of beans anyway. And I thought to myself, do I get mad? I thought, no. Because we know what my father's done. We know the sacrifice that really wasn't a sacrifice. Because if you think, he sacrificed his whole life to helping other people, then you look back and you go, sacrifice? Blessing. And I think to myself, so now what in my life? What in my life? Sacrifice? Blessing. I look at my life right now and I think to myself, well, God has blessed me with this opportunity to help my father in these final days, in the end of his life, and to help him graciously to the other side, because he basically, for 4 days, he was just asleep, basically just asleep but awake. He would say a few little things here and there, not much. So for 4 or 5 days, And I wasn't even there for a few of the days. My brother Michael would FaceTime with me and my dad. And my dad was just basically sleeping. And then when I got out of the hospital, I went straight over to my dad, and we had to put all this stupid PPE stuff, this, every gown and a face mask and a face shield and gloves, and just it was really kind of silly. It's like, here's this man who's dying, and am I protecting him from me or me from him? But I thought, it's okay, it doesn't matter. And I sat there with my dad, and I held his hand, and he just was asleep, basically, just kind of unconscious, asleep. And every now and then he'd squeeze my hand. And I sat there with him, and I just put my head down on his hands, on my hands and his hands, and I fell asleep. And then my dad squeezed my hand, and I woke up. And I just said, Dad, it's okay whenever you want to go. I said, you've done a valiant life. You've been a good, honest, loving man, a good father. You've been a good teacher. And I said, and you've given your family and a lot of people the tools to now move forward and do good. And I said, so you can go whenever you want. I said, we'll be okay. And he was just there. And so I was there for about an hour, and I realized that I had spent my time, because they only allowed a certain amount of time. And so I left, and then the next morning at 3:04 a.m., he had taken his last breath, and squeezed my brother Michael's hand. My brother Michael stayed with him a lot, which is good, because Michael needed time with my dad. There was a lot of family turmoil between him and my brother Mark that basically stole 25 years of my brother's relationship with my dad. And so I was glad that my brother Michael spent time with my dad, lots of time. And Michael's a different person because of it. Michael's a different person. He let go of a lot of garbage that all of you have to let go of too with your parents. No matter how old you are, no matter how young you are, our parents, they have their hooks in us. And we can either leave those hooks in there, or we can forgive and realize, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, and let it go. No matter what the reason, no matter what the cause, no matter what the trickster tells you, it doesn't matter. It's called forgiveness. It's called forgiveness. And if we can't forgive our parents for our foolishness, how can we expect our Father in heaven to forgive us? Although He does anyway. But we have to surrender, we have to release all of this immaturity. It's all immaturity. It's just like you watch the little grandkids or your kids playing with the toys, and no, it's mine, no, it's mine, and they try and take from each other, and imagine a gracious little child that would say, here, play with my toy. What a different world it would be. But it's not designed like that. The design is that we must be what we will be. We must be selfish, we must be arrogant, we must be prideful, we must be judgmental, we must be all those things. It's part of the life experience. We must be all those things. And then we come to this place of realization and we say, wow, that was all kind of dumb. And let go and just say, it was wrong. I was wrong. And then the freedom, the absolute freedom, once you realize and once you're ready to let go, and like she said, you bring your burden to Christ and you say, I've been a fool. I've been selfish. I've been judgmental. I've been angry. I've been all these things. Whatever it is, whatever comes to you because it is you, say, I'm sorry. I repent of my foolishness and my sins. and I don't want this anymore. I want to be still, and I want to be calm, and I want to know. And I know that you will show me which way to go. And it's funny because as we watch the movie, if you watch this movie, which I think you should all watch it, it's a wonderful, entertaining movie, TV series. But as I watch it, I realize they keep asking Jesus, where are we going? I don't know. We're heading this way. And that's just life. And each episode, where are we going this time, Jesus? I think we'll go this way. And I watched my father my whole life, all my life. He would say to me, just go up and sit and just start talking. Don't know. Because when you don't know, you have to express an element of faith. And you can hear yourself saying, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, that's kind of that silly flesh, doubting, not knowing. And I remember, 40 years, my dad said to me one time, why don't you do my radio show? I have to go and do something. I can't be there. I said, I don't know how to do the radio show. I was 20 years old. He says, it's good for you. You just go and do it. Just sit down and people will start to call, or you can start talking about whatever it is that comes to your mind. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do it. And I remember doing it. I remember feeling like a fool. I remember feeling like I'm inadequate. You know, who am I to sit here and speak? But I did it. And it was okay. And I remember thinking, so you don't have to know. And if you look at the Pharisees, it was all about the laws and all about the books and all about everything that they know. But Jesus, he just moved in faith. He didn't always know, but he knew. It wasn't he that knew. It was the Father within him that compelled him to say and do whatever he said and did. So I spent the next 40 years of my life not knowing what to do. And sometimes I would get to a place in my life and I would say, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to keep going. And I would say, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to keep going. And the doubt would come in, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, if I could only be as smart as my father. Oh, if I could only be as smart as my brother Mark. And I look back now and I think to myself, my father was not smart. My father had a brilliance about him that was not from this earth. It was from a heavenly place. And it was directed and guided. And even as the words were coming out of his mouth sometimes, I can remember looking at his face, going, does he really know what he's saying? Or is he just saying what God is compelling him to say in the moment? And I can tell you that I've watched my father many a time, and he'd look around at the room and look for reaction. And I'm not sure that he actually knew in that moment what he was going to say before he said it. It just came out. It was drawn out by you or you or you. And it's because he didn't need to have the smarts, the knowledge, the book, whatever you want to call that book smarts. It was something that was something greater than him. And it was really fun for all of us to watch, because we knew that it wasn't something that was written somewhere that you could go and find that he memorized. It was straight from the heavens. And so I think that all of us, as we go through our lives, we have to learn how to not try and conjure up something somebody said, not even something my father said, but truly to just simply be still, be calm, and know that the Father in heaven will compel you to say what you need to say in that moment, or do what you need to do, or go where you need to go, or show up where you need to show up. And then just be ready. Be a vessel of the Father in heaven. I remember one time my father went for a jog, and I don't know what I was doing. I was doing whatever it was. I was about 17 years old. And something said to me, "Where's my father?" And I thought, well, I don't know. He went jogging. Where's my father? And I got up and I got in the car and I started driving around, and all I can remember clearly was, where's my father? And I drove around and I drove up and down this street, and I thought, well, where does he run? I don't know where he would run. I don't know. And I remember driving down the street and I saw him sitting on the lawn, holding his ankle. And so I turned around and I pulled up next to him and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for you." He said, "I knew you would." He said, "I hurt my ankle." So he got in the car and he said, and all I remember him saying is, "I knew you'd come looking for me." So I think that's our job in our lives, with our children, with our friends, with whatever. If you are compelled forward, you will find that you are a conduit of the Father in heaven. But my dad knew that I would come looking for him. So I keep thinking to myself, well, where is he? Where is he? He's laying in a place waiting to be buried now. Jesus was such a simple man, and his words were very simple, and anybody could understand them. Anybody. But the Pharisees, they were the scholars. They were the ones that had all of they were the purveyors of knowledge and wisdom. But what was it in the Garden of Eden? It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And in this TV series, The Chosen, they really play these people well. And there was one, Nicodemus. He wanted to follow Jesus. And the man that played this in this role did such a good job. It was beautiful to watch, but in the end, he couldn't do it because he was being honored that day. You see his ego. They got his ego. He was being honored, and his life that he had was so wonderful. And his wife says, "I love our life." And, she in essence was part of the scene of the crime. He could have followed Jesus, and he didn't. And he stood around the corner and watched them all about to depart and cried and cried. And Jesus, this guy plays Jesus so good. He heard his crying in his heart, and he says, "Oh, it's too bad you came so close." And so many of us come so close but we can't give up our pride, our will, our earthly selves. We just don't want to give it up. And it's funny, I hate to say it, and it's just bothering me, but I don't care about anything anymore. And I think, should I be bothered? I have all these wonderful things and this stuff, and I finally got a nice boat and a car, and I'm like, I don't even care. I want to push them out in the street and have the trash man take them. And it's concerning me.
I think it's beautiful that.
Ellen, I wouldn't mind having the boat.
He wants the boat.
I was just going to say, I think it's beautiful that you got to get all the worldly things there is to get, and now you're to let it go.
Yeah. My son,
So, I mean, there's no want.
I know.
There's no want.
I
That's
honestly, I just.
beautiful.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You put a lecture on the announcement you gave about your dad. On the same page, there was an announcement for a lecture that was Easter 2002. And Charles and I have been listening to it, and in it, it's funny you should say this about things, because at one point your dad says, as long as you're not in the things, you can have the things.
Yeah. Well, my son this morning came over and he fed the chickens for us, and he says, "Dad, I'm going to sell that jet ski if you want it." And I really want it. So here was my chance to buy it, right? And I said, "How much do you want for it?" And he says, $2,500. I said, "It's too cheap. It's too cheap. You're selling it too cheap." He says, "Oh, I don't care. I'm done with it. I don't want it anymore." I said, "Son, it's too cheap." And something was bubbling up, going to say, "I'll take it." But it didn't. And I thought, I'm a Jew. I can't let a good deal go. And then about
You
an
sound
hour.
like your dad.
Yeah, I know. About an hour later, I saw on social media, there was the ad. There was the $2,500. And I was compelled. I thought to myself, I got to call him up and I got to buy it. I need to buy that thing. And I thought, no, I don't want it. And I just have, it's funny, I bought a brand new car in August of last year, and it's sitting in Las Vegas, and it's a very expensive, fancy car, and there it sits. And today, I'm supposed to be in Las Vegas for some fancy dinner where they're gonna do some fancy things to this car. It's a very valuable car. And it's been August. I've never seen the car. And here I am sitting here with you guys, not at this fancy dinner. Of course, my father just passed away, but I don't even care. I don't even care. And I said to the guy the other day, I said, "Why don't you just sell that car?" And he says, "Well, we want 10% if we sell it." I said, "I don't care."
I said to Charles, I know Alan's going to be a changed man after this. And I can hear it.
Well, I'm glad to be a changed man. I mean, doesn't everybody want to be a changed
We
man?
all want to be changed,
Yeah,
and not by ourselves.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
For one of those people that have been stuck for many years, the other day I was sitting there and I was just noticing my thoughts, and I was noticing how much hostility is in there. And I'm like, wow. I was like, wow, I'm really hostile against everybody. And then what I wanted, but I don't want to, the part of me wants to talk about myself, but what I did see later, and this has been going on for years, is that you see you're wrong, and then I double down to be good. I do this, it's a trick. It's a trick. And I didn't know it was a trick. I know it's a trick now. And there's something about doubling down on your sin nature and being good. There's some trick in there because we're not have faith that we'll be forgiven.
Yeah.
It's a trick. My dad, and I've been a person that he used to say, if you don't feel your fingers every time you meditate, every single finger, you might as well just say you didn't do the meditation. So, well, I mean,
Trust me, I've often wondered about that myself.
So no, but what I mean is there's something about focusing too hard
Yeah.
that is dangerous. And your dad, before he died last week, I was just wondering about what does it mean to love God? What does, really just, and it came to me, what it means is obedience. And in the Garden of Eden, but God put it in us he put something in us to have a choice, to love him or not. And all he said is, you can do whatever you want, you can have all the jet skis you want, all the cars, but don't eat from that tree. And that tree is that knowledge. And for some of us, that knowledge is horrible. It is horrible because you can't take it out yourself. And it's that place. So why the very first woman, why did she choose? What she did is she chose to be like God. Why do we choose that when we know better? Why do we do that?
Because we're stupid.
But you're talking about Adam and Eve. It's a figurative story because the theory is, the way the story's told and the way Roy always told it is, Adam had a choice. We don't have a choice. Because Adam made the choice, the father of our whatever we are.
But Jesus came to...
He came to change it. But the point is, Adam set it in motion by his choice. He regretted his choice, but now, according to the way the Bible tells the story, now his descendants are cursed with this nature that tends to make the wrong choice, and we just fall into it. We just begin to judge and get angry, and when we're afraid, we want to judge, graze above our fear. So it's an interesting story because Adam was sorry he did it. And that's why Adam's sorrow about doing it, according to the story, God says, well, I will send someone to change the nature of your descendants back. I'll undo the mistake that now you regret making. So we're all destined to make that mistake. We can't help it. If you spend your life feeling guilty about it, that's a mistake too. And he's saying that now, because we're after the Savior, he's got a way to bring us, change our nature somehow. And I don't know how that works, but it's interesting because we have that marvelous story. And Roy, 90% of the time, Roy always comes back to Adam and Eve. I remember once a couple of years ago, I was visiting his house, and he would pull out the Bible and he'd want to do something. He'd always go to the first page of the Bible, and he'd want to read about Adam and Eve, and we'd talk about that. Because that's so essential we never get past that. We're still blaming ourselves or God or somebody for our nature. And it's a very simple story. So that's what it's all about. I was going to mention, because some things Cheryl said, the other day I went on, there's a site called Roy Masters that's in addition to the FHU site, and it's sponsored by the FHU, and I decided to look at all the videos, do a search of the videos by the least viewed. So I looked at the videos that had almost no views, and these have been up for years. And one of them I found was not even 2 minutes long. And so I said, well, heck, what the heck, I'll see, nobody wants to watch this, I'll look at it. No comments, nothing. It was so profound, because in those 1 minute and 58 seconds, he goes through everything that he's teaching us in just that short little, and sometimes it's only a phrase. Huh? I was going to bring it.
I was going to say, share it.
Well, I was going to bring it. I forget the name of it now, but maybe one day I can bring a laptop and just play it for everybody, and then we could talk about it. Because in that short little span, he covers almost everything we've said today. But it's really, to me, I said, how did he get all that? And he was just very personal, talking to somebody, and it just all came out. The whole story right there. So I'm hearing it coming out of us, in a sense, being confirmed.
In my experience, I'm feeling like it's a gift from God. And you've described it before, I listened to it. He's trying to bring us to this spot. And it's to look at ourselves, which is the hardest thing to do. We have things that we're hiding, that we're so ashamed of. And he's trying to bring you to this spot. And you get so desperate of living without him that you finally get closer and closer to that spot. And then he'll relieve you. It's a release. It talks about it in the Bible like it's something you do. And I found out it's not something that we do. It's a gift. When we get to that spot, it happens. But there's so many times for it to happen. We have so much in us that has to be released. In fact, I wanted to share something really quick, as Chuck did a class at Brighton Academy for adults when my kids were growing up, and they were my little cheerleaders. It was a public speaking class. Hardest thing I ever did, and I took it two years in a row. And the first thing he said, I never forgot, and I think I've used it in my whole life. He said, I don't want you to write stuff down. I want you to stand up there and let it come out. Just like you said, your dad told you. And when I started selling pies for my business, I had to get up there and let it come out. And it didn't want to come out. And I was stumbling around, and people were going, where's Linda? I said, she's sick of selling pies. I said, try it and see if it's as good as hers. And pretty soon I became that person. But throughout my whole 20 years, I kept learning more stuff. And sometimes I would say, I shared something I said so embarrassing one time. I said to this lady in front of her whole family, and I apologized to her, and she said, it's okay. I said, no, that wasn't okay. I'm really sorry. And her whole face just released, just went, I could see she would have held on to it if I hadn't have said, no, that was wrong. And she just relaxed, just like she let go of it. Anyways, I learned a lot from that one thing. And after one of the class, he made us sing a song in front of everybody without any music. Without any music. And the first time we were supposed to do it, we had lost a fellow student to death, to a car accident. So we were all in so mourning we couldn't do it. So I had to wait another 2 weeks to do this horrible thing. I thought I was going to go crazy. But I was smart enough to know that I had to sing the hard song. So I'm singing, it's my party and I cry. and he's told us that he had this experiment that the voice can come from way deep inside. It happened to me. They were falling off their chairs laughing. Normally that would have stopped me dead in my tracks. I sang that whole song, and I never understood why they were rolling on the floor laughing. But on the way home, I was laughing and crying at the same time. Something let go of me. Something let go of me. So I always am so happy about that class. I learned a lot, but it was hard every time I went. And my kids were so cute. They wanted to sing behind me and do the boo, do something behind me. And I said, no, because that would make it too easy.
I have to add, I took the class too, and we got together.
Oh, that's how you met?
Kind of. We would go out for coffee after the class.
You talking about you and Chuck?
Yeah, the class he taught on public speaking.
Well, haven't you guys been together for like 30 years?
We have been together for
been a
30
while
years, but
since
this...
I taught.
That story she's telling is 30 years old?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I moved here in 91. I didn't know you two, but you got married just a few months later, like June of 91.
Well, I'll tell you what I've noticed in the last year of my life is how my life and how I live my life has affected my kids. And my kids have all grown and become more mature because I've grown and become more mature. And it's kind of the ripple effect. Each one of us, we have no idea how much our actions and our either love or resentment, judgment, anger, whatever we're carrying with us, how it has a ripple effect out into not only our community, but our families. And I watch my kids and I think to myself, whose kids are those? Whose wonderful people are those? And then I reflect and I look at myself and I say, well, they're mine because I've been obedient. And I think that is the gift. That is the treasure. That is the true treasure of being obedient to your Father in heaven and to my Father on earth even. But the treasure that I experience because of the way I've been living my life for the last year or so, it hasn't been easy. It's like I see the anger, I see the resentment, and I see all these little things coming up from stuff I have to deal with at the foundation and business and in this world because of this COVID garbage and the election and people that I interact with. And there's so much angst and so much garbage. And I see it and I look at it and I watch it and I recognize it's not me. It wants to be me. It wants to commandeer me because I'm a prize. I'm a prize and you're a prize. And if we allow this dark side to commandeer, to get control over us and through our emotions, then it wreaks its havoc on our families and our community and our country and our world. And so what I've learned is, obviously, to just watch, to be still, to be conscious of it and see it as not me. Of myself I can do nothing, that's not me. That anger is not me. That judgment is not me. That contempt, that greed, all those emotions, that is not me. It's not me. And I just watch. And if I just know and have confidence, absolute confidence, that is not me. That is not what God wants for me. That is not why Jesus came to free us from those things. That is not me. Then I step back and I'm free. I'm free from it. But then what happens is my children see me, just like we watch my dad. We've watched my dad for years dealing with all kinds of things. We watch him. If he deals with it right, it frees us because we love him and we love what's in him, right? And he, because he does not react to it, because he does not fall prey to it, he frees us. And that's why we love being around my dad and listening to my dad, because he is the one man in our lives that has not succumbed to that other world, the dark world. But I promise you that each one of you can do that. Each one of us can do that exact same thing. And all it is just being calm, being objective, letting your intuitive nature say, that is not me. That is not me. And then just watch. And God then puts into you this peace. He puts into you a peace. And then slowly but surely you see the ripple effect of how it deals with the relationship that you have one-on-one if you're just a husband and wife. The husband or the wife does the right thing. It affects the other. And then those two go out into the world and affect another. And then that ripple effect goes out into the world. And it all is simply just not believing the liar, because the liar lies. That is not me. I will not fall prey to the evils of this world. I want the kingdom of heaven. And I want what God wants for me. and I want to be obedient to my Father in heaven. And you know, I know, I didn't want to say this today, but I know that I was in my dad's church about 40 years ago up on Evelyn, and I said, "Where are you, Jesus? Where are you? Where are you?" And just the air opened up, and he says, "I'm right here waiting for you." And then it just closed back. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that this whole thing, this whole world that we're in, is a kind of a facade. It's a stage, and there's a curtain between the heavens and earth. And so when you guys say your father's dead, your father's died, you know, I think to myself, yeah, his body, but his spirit is just on the other side with Jesus and with all the other good people that have made it. And the question is, can we make it? Can we make it? And Jesus said, they said to him, he said, I have to go outside and just be by myself for a little while. And they said, "Well, how will we know where you are?" And he turned and he looked back and he said, "Seek and you shall find me." And so that's our job, is to just seek.
I wanted to add a little bit to what you were saying. I really love Roy, with the radio show and going to the meetings, because it was a different, like you were saying, it was from the Spirit. It wasn't, because so much of media and churches, it's scripted. It's so scripted. So he had such a contrast of not the intellectual, but the opposite, the intuitive, and it was like magic, and it brought me back and back and back, and I had to see things about myself, and I've been very stubborn just because of whatever reason, the way I was brought up without a father, but he was always there, and there was love there, and it was recognized. And sometimes it was harsh, but not really harsh, because I knew what he meant. I knew he didn't want to push me down. He wanted me to wake up, and that spirit was there.
So now it's up to you and up to all of us to be that what we loved about my Father and his Spirit. And if we can all be that we loved about him and the Father that was in him, then we can all have an effect on people in this town and in the world. And I feel like that it's very, very, very possible. It is just a matter of choice. It's like Chuck said about Adam. He made a choice and he regretted it. I'm not going to regret my next choice.
What popped into my mind was my first trip down to Venice Boulevard. And just scared to death, sitting in the room, and your dad was up there. And so I got behind a tall guy, because he could read, he could read me, and hiding and all of that, and then the little crumbs on the trail, so to speak, over time, and he is without a doubt as a human being the most important person I've ever met in my life, and my life totally changed so much over the years, and I'm an old man now, but I just am so grateful. And then I ask and I say, everyone here knows this stuff, but how is it that I know what I know, or what I perceive and what I've learned from him out of all the billions of people? And there may be a whole lot of them, I don't know. But why do I know? and you and you and you and all the way around.
Yeah.
It was such a gift, and God bless you, Roy. That's all I say.
Well, because you were chosen. And so therefore the responsibility, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that, with that, as you go through your life, make every choice count. Make every word you utter count.
It's written that when Jesus comes, that his words will be more precious than gold. And I've said this before, but I've heard those words from your Father. And that's what I hear you saying to us, is now we must impart that same knowledge or same understanding. It should come through us to others.
But don't look for it. Don't look for it to be there, to be smart. Just be a willing vessel.
You don't know when it's happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Don't let one hand know what the other one is doing. And you think, how can that be? Because it happens so fast. It happens so fast, and your hands aren't even there. It's more like it just moves through you. And I think that we are gifted in the fact that for those who heard the calling in my Father's soul and could hear something special, that's a gift from God. Because he wasn't a regular man.
Yeah, I'll say it.
He wasn't a regular man. But he was just a regular man. It's like Jesus even said, he says, I'm just a man. And he had to go through the same kind of sufferings, and probably far greater suffering than any human being you'll ever meet in your life.
I like
Jesus.
to read comments, so when you put the post on about your dad, I was reading all the comments, and the one that struck me the most was a man who said, he's the first person I listened to that made sense.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's here. He's in my mind I can conjure up a dead body. But that body isn't my dad.
Yeah.
It's not my dad. My dad is a spirit. My dad is a spirit of kindness and love. And so my head every now and then tries to picture this body laying in the morgue. But that's not my dad. My dad is with Jesus. And when God came to me one morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he came right up to my face and he says, how do you plead? And I knew it was God. And I said, guilty. I'm guilty and I'm sorry. I repent of my sins. I'm guilty. I'm sorry. And God said, and now you are forgiven. And it's like, that's not a movie. That's not a movie. We can see these things in movies. I completely felt the weight of the world lift out of my soul. And he said, now you can come with us and be a freer of souls. And I thought to myself, freer of souls? And who's us? And it was just a few little things. And I haven't been the same since. Because that I felt, that forgiveness was so instantaneous. Because I was not going to try to make an excuse in the world. It was instantaneous forgiveness. And everything went away. Everything, every lie, every doubt, every fear, everything went away. And then he left me with, now you can come with us and be a freer of souls. And I thought, who's us, Lord? Which tells me one thing, there's a lot of us on the other side. Us. So us. And all we have to do is be able to help people to be free from their own doubts, and their own fears, and their own lack of faith and understanding. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's an absolutely beautiful thing. And I started within my own family. I stopped judging my children, because you can judge them, you stupid idiot, what are you doing that for? Or why did you want to do that? Or what a dumb thing you did? Or just all these stupid little thoughts. I just watched, and I just freed my children from any garbage that I was going to try to heap upon their heads. And I just was loving, just understanding, loving, listening. And then something happened. My children started to change. They started to look at me. They started to look at my face. Like, what's going on there? Before it was just, hi, Dad, what's going on? Or, I'm going to go here or there. But my kids would look at my face, and I would look at them. And there was just a sweetness between us. And my children just started blossoming. And so I recognized, the same thing with my wife. I stopped pressuring her. I just stopped everything. I just left her alone. Just wanted to be kind to her, thoughtful, loving. And all of a sudden, my relationship with my wife completely changed. We've been together 40 years. Completely changed. Innocent, like she's my sister now. And it's a strange thing. It's a very strange thing. So my life has been going this way for the last year, and I'm very thankful. And now my father is gone. And what is next for the foundation is that I need to recruit all of you. I need to recruit you. I need for you to actually accept that you are the chosen in that way. Because we all have a purpose in this life. And if we just say, ho hum, oh well, I'm just going to be me, I'm just going to go do my thing, then we're not going to be taking the opportunity to reach out to a brother or a sister and offer that love. The opportunity to turn left one day, you don't know why. My wife and I were on our way to Costco the other day, and a friend called and said, come over and see this car. And I didn't want to, but he had put a lot of work into it, so I went to his shop. And I looked at it, and we talked for 10 minutes. And then we kind of had to take some obscure back road to Costco. And I'd never been on this road before. And I see this car sticking straight up out of a ditch. The back wheels are completely off the ground, and this car sticking straight up out of a ditch. And there's an old lady in this car. And somehow she was backing out of a driveway and backed right into the ditch, and the car almost flipped over. And it had just happened. And so I pulled over immediately, and I got out and I said, are you okay? And she says, yes, I don't know. I just don't know what happened. Of course not. She's being unaware. And I had filled my truck full of stuff as like a tow truck, had chains and all kinds of, things to help people. And so I said, okay, let me help you get out of the car, and I'll get this car out of the ditch. And so I went and I got a chain and I hooked it around, and I said, all right, you stand over there out of the way now. And my wife never even said a word. She never even got out of the passenger seat. And I backed up and I pulled that thing right out of the ditch. And it was just nothing. It was a no thing. I know my dad tells a story about, a person who's drowning. And the person that's on the side of the pool that reaches out and grabs the drowning person and pulls him over to the side. And I know this is going to be, I don't know the right words, but is it denada? Is that what it is? Denada? It's nothing?
It's nothing.
Right?
Denada, you're right.
Denada?
It's nothing.
It's nothing. It's nothing for the person that saves the other person's life. But it's everything to the person whose life was saved. We need to be those lifesavers. We need to turn down that street for some strange reason that day. We need to be the ones that hear the calling so that we are God's chosen and God's people with purpose. I want that. Anybody else want that? Then let's do it.
We're all old enough.
We're all old enough, is right. All right.
Can I tell one more thing?
Keep it short, lady.
I promise I will. Roy said something to me 30 years ago. He said, "Have you gotten a house yet?" And I looked at him like, "Don't you remember? I'm a single parent. I have 4 kids." I told him that. And he said, "I don't care." He said, "There's a way for each person." And that stuck in me, and I wondered about it, and I realized I had that little door closed inside of me that said, "That's available to you." And in 2 years, I had a house and a business. 5 years after that, I got to have a business on my property. But and there was a lot of miracles that came with getting that house. Miracles, actual miracles that happened with buying that house, with finding that house. It was amazing. But I never forgot that. And then a family that I knew, they said, "Well, we got both parents. We should be able to get a house." In a year, they had a house. But it was neat how it trickled down. You know, other people saw that, and I don't know what I would have been like without all that happening. It was, you know, even the business, I was so afraid to buy it. I had to get on my knees and say, you know, I always drop the ball. Just please help me not drop the ball this time. And it was just amazing. All just because of one statement that your dad made to me. One statement.
Now you need to be, we need to be, and you need to be the person that makes that one statement. I've had that happen in my life. I had a guy, matter of fact, the guy that I went to visit with the car, had I not gone to visit that guy, I wouldn't have helped that old lady. But that particular guy, 30 years ago, used to work for me, and I had to fire him. And I said, "Why are you hanging around with such bad people? You are much better than that. You should leave those people alone. They're going to drag you into the gutter." And so I fired him. And then I didn't see him for 25 years. And then I sat next to him on an airplane. I might have told you guys this story. And he had his 25-year-old son sitting next to him. So I hadn't seen him, you know, in a chunk of life there. And he started crying. And he said, "I just wanted to thank you because you're the only person in my whole life that ever said anything to me of meaning." And he cried in front of his own son, in front of my wife and children, full-grown man. And I thought to myself, there's that ripple effect, that same little ripple effect that my Father has said to each one of us, or you, in a way that somehow it manifested itself. Just like when Jesus was laying there and he said, "I know a man who's having a happy day today." Not for his glory, not because he wanted to be seen as the guy that saved and fixed the man's leg, but because for the glory of God. Because he's doing what is right, and because he is being a conduit, a tool of the Father in heaven. And we should all be tools of the Father in heaven. And this world will be a better place. This town will be a better place. And it'll ripple out to our children that are out into the world. And God knows what happens next. These talks that get out. I don't know if you notice, there are people that said things from all the way from England. You know, a few of this lady named Sid, she comments on everything, and she calls my father her father, and that ripple effect is amazing. And we've all probably waited far too long, so it's time for us to get up and get going now. Do something good in our lives. And leave all of the junk behind. Let your motives be pure. And seek and you shall find the answers. My dad is not dead. His body is gone. His spirit is alive. and it's alive in all of us. And thousands upon thousands of people in this world. So we can all be thankful for that and emulate what he has taught us. Okay? All right. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank